Hello everyone, welcome. I am Cassidy the Card Slinger. This video is going to be talking about deck storage, and I am in part doing this video as a response to a number of times I've had questions, largely when I'm at in-person events or doing workshops, things like that, and people ask, how do you store your decks? What do you do with how many decks you have and with a collection that size? So partly that, and also because I just love talking about tarot. And this is a bit of a different type of video because a lot of my videos tend to focus on deck reviews, flip-throughs, showcasing decks and things like that. So after your collection becomes a certain size, let's talk about what to do with them. So we'll start right back at the beginning. So as most people do, unless you inherit a collection right off the bat, I had one tarot deck. So my very first deck that I got is the Tarocco Sopraffino, the beautiful, the gorgeous Il Meneghello. This was my first deck, and I still love her to this day. She's absolutely gorgeous. And I believe my second deck, if I am not mistaken, was the Tarot Illuminati. I have access to that, the Illuminati Tarot, because, I mean, this isn't a video about my tarot journey, but I wanted a deck that was illustrated as opposed to Marseille style, as I was learning the cards and wanted to be able to learn the other sort of system. So the reason why that is relevant, because there was at one point, after you have one deck, I had two decks, all of my deck collection used to fit in here. So this is just a little, which now cases, I've got different rocks and actually there's stones and I've got heg stones in here and various little objects. But this was my tarot collection box for a while. Just to say, you don't need any special way of storing your decks. You can tuck them anywhere that they will be safe and dry and not grabbed by the wrong hands or have the opportunity to get spilled on or anything like that. So storing on like kitchen table and things might be problematic for those possible reasons. But nevertheless, this was how I first stored my decks. When I had two decks, they both fit in here. Then after I got a few more decks, I ended up storing them in a bookshelf. We're going to go down and take a look at that. But just to also say, because I'd forgotten about this, there was a point where I was under the impression that every deck needed its own deck bag. So a really good friend of mine put me in contact with a seamstress who I went through my whole tarot collection and had her embroider, design, make different tarot bags. And as you can see, these are all, I just use them now for when I'm going to events and stuff to put my decks in. But nothing, actually that's not true. I do have a few decks that are stored in bags that I use quite regularly, but you do not need anything other than what the deck comes in to store your decks. They of course can be stored with crystals or incense or anything that you like, but in my opinion, you don't need to make anything more difficult than it needs to be. So after I ended up getting a few more decks, started buying some books, I ended up buying a bookshelf. So we'll see that in just a moment. And it's one of those long, tall boy, skinny, just a black bookshelf. And I really liked that format because it was great that you could see all of the decks. Well, let's just jump ahead. I'll hop into that right now. Once I started buying more books and decks, I ended up buying just this tall, skinny, I don't know, this is from like IKEA or something, one of these little tall, skinny bookshelf case things, and this held all of my decks for quite some time before I ended up moving to where I'm at now. And this now just serves as a bookshelf in my little reading nook that my cat is currently enjoying. So that was something I really liked about this setup, was that you could easily see all of the decks. Everything was organized, and I really do like the bookshelf, bookcase type layout for deck storage. So this little book nook bench is actually a cedar chest underneath it here, which I will pop open and we can take a look. And under here is where I typically store decks that I don't work with very often. They're either seasonal decks or maybe duplicates or something that I'm wanting to sell. So let's take a look in there. Okay, so I pulled off the pillows and now you can just see the chest. My cat is going to be trying to jump on the same time. So yes, here we are. I got my little Ouija board in there and a number of different decks. And what else do I even have in here? Some recording equipment and things, different books, notebooks, things like that. So here are just a few extra storage decks. But I also really like the cedar chest type format. But if you are using it as something to sit on, then of course you'll need to take your cushions off or anything. So they're a little less accessible. So yeah, I've got my Halloween decks in here, Christmas decks. I've got a second copy of, oh my goodness, the Spirit Keepers. A couple of Thoths, and yes, so this is my long-term storage. Don't need readily available access to the decks and things in here. And I do believe at some point in time I had also used this little wicker basket for decks. Now it just holds like a green screen and some candle making supplies in there. But the basket worked really well, kind of similarly to the chest, that you could have all of your decks laid out in there. It was easy, it was mobile, you could move it around if you ever wanted to take your decks into a different room or something. So I do also really like, I think I got this from Michael's. It's just a craft store here in Canada. I don't know if they have Michael's everywhere, but it wasn't very expensive. They have like HomeSense and things like that too. So this is also quite a good type option for smaller spaces and collections that, I mean, you can get multiple of these, which also works well. My cat is just really enjoying filming this with me. Just throwing this in here. A big thing you're going to want to consider about where you can store your decks is very much dependent on where you live, what your home looks like, what space you have available. So if you don't have an entire room to dedicate to your decks, or if you have a space in a closet or wherever, that'll obviously dictate how you want to store your decks. But a big part, and I'm going to talk about this in just a second in the video, is the space that I currently use for my readings is up in a loft, and I don't have vertical walls. So let me show you what I mean. So once I moved from my last apartment, the long, tall, skinny dresser would no longer fit up in my loft space that I have dedicated for my tarot readings. As you can see, the walls are not vertical. They are bent, so I can't have tall, like all of the walls on each of the sides. So it did not work. So I ended up getting this desk I just got about 2 weeks ago, but this was my first purchase here. What I really like about these desks in particular is that you can use them as a reading space. So for this desk, it needs to pull out here. That folds down, and then I have a nice big space to do readings. There's nice little slots here for different decks. I semi-rotate out the decks that I have here depending on what I'm working with, and then you have these nice little I had a candle in there and I need to clean up the beeswax, and you have all the nice little drawers and this little, I just got some candles tucked away in there. So this is very nice because then you have both storage and a place to do your readings. So how I have this currently organized, and I would like to reorganize it at the moment, but I have a layer, well, I think this is 2 layers. Yeah, so it's double layered, but I have mostly Oracle decks in here on this side, and then I've got some Lenormand decks here and some Gypsy Fortune telling cards, Sibylla decks, some playing cards. So these are non-tarot Oracle decks, playing card decks and things like that. And I mean, these go back quite a way, so you can get quite a lot of storage, and it's still very readily accessible to accessing your decks that way. Then this drawer is strictly tarot. And again, nice, like I have these sitting sideways, so these aren't double layered. It's probably easy to tell, but it just goes right to the bottom. So sitting sideways, then you can very easily see a number of different decks at once. And then I've just got a second layer in the back. So this is just tarot. I've got sort of like a Marseille-ish section going on, but it's organized for me, for myself. Doesn't need to be organized for anyone else. This drawer is, I don't know how to describe it, special, a very special drawer. I've got my journal in here, and then a number of different decks that are either out of print, hard to find, particularly special for the moment. I just bought this deck a few weeks ago, or a few months ago on my most recent trip, and then I've got my Grand Jeu Lenormands in here, have a couple of Il Meneghello decks in here, a few other little, my Marielle is back there, my Anna Kay. So I've just got a varying, my Belines are in here. This is my Grand Beline, and then the smaller one. If you're interested in that comparison, I just filmed that video a couple weeks ago. Who else is in here? Oh yeah, Joanna Joss's deck. Who else? Yeah, I mean, just for some reason, there's something special about the decks that make it into this drawer here. And then I've got just incense and a few extra, got some tarot stickers and things going on in here. And then in the bottom drawer, because if you can see on this desk, this is very skinny. This is a bit wider, and then these 2 drawers have quite a bit more depth to them. So this, I think, is it's either the same as this or a bit larger. So I use this space to hold the bigger decks, the bigger, chunkier boxes, because I like to keep the box that the deck comes with. They're the only decks that I have that don't have the boxes with them are decks that I purchased typically without a box, but if it came with a box, I like to keep them when I can. So this is, this was my main storage facility, until I realized that this was full and I had a few more decks that needed a home. So within the last couple of, when did I buy this? 2 months ago? I just purchased this guy. I don't even know what's in here. Yeah, so I've got a couple of decks and some books that I'm reading and things going on in there. And then I believe, so my top drawer is empty, so I have space for whoever else may come my way. And then slowly, this is not really all that organized, but I've just got a few tarots, a few other decks. These are all the decks that I purchased on my last trip, and I have a separate video going through all of those. Should you care to see the decks that I bought, some receipts for some decks. And then, I think again, this is a bit of a wider drawer, so I'm storing a couple of bigger box decks down here, as well as, yeah, these guys have decks in them too. So this desk is not particularly organized. So this video is a snapshot in real life how my desks are actually stored, and was not curated just to make this video. So I do really like this sort of style of having it's just a really good use of space in terms of you can store a lot of decks, you can still access them, and then you have different reading spaces. So I highly recommend this sort of style. So this one I got at an antique store locally, and this guy I got on Facebook Marketplace. They're called either secretary desks, roll top desks, flip top desks, or dressers. This was actually a woman's dresser. Then she just had clothes stored in it. But something I will say, if you are storing a lot of decks, just something to consider, like these drawers are very stable and they feel like they have a bit of roll on them. These ones, I don't know how much I trust them. Like the decks obviously weigh quite a bit. So if you are going into this space, like not all desks are created equal for sure. Some of them are a lot more sturdy. So if you're just considering the weight, like, and also the weight of this desk. I mean, not that you may be having somewhere where the floor is sturdy, but I can only imagine how much that desk weighs. Not that it really matters, but I can't quite remember the order that my deck storage went through. But if you're someone who's looking for a different way to store decks, you don't need a tall space. You could do a short style bookshelf, or if you're someone who wants to keep them contained and closed, something like that wicker basket is a nice idea, or any sort of box just to contain your collection. It is nice to keep things all together if you don't have a designated spot in your house to keep things. But of course, my personal favorite is these desks. They just work really well. They keep everything organized. You can shuffle things around for different seasons or different decks that you're working with into longer term storage, or you can just keep them all in one desk. But I mean, for me personally, that has been my favorite style of deck storage, is the desks with the drawers. But also closets work really nice, any sort of shelving, keeping things out. But the nice part about keeping them inside is like they're not going to get dusty or things like that. But yes, so thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this or this was helpful. If there's any way that you store your decks that are different from this, or any other storage suggestions you may have or questions, please pop them below. I am active in the comments and always like to see what other collectors are doing, particularly when folks are getting, I have a modest size collection, but when you get up there in numbers, I love seeing how different folks end up storing their large collections so that you can still use them and work with them and see what you have. Because I'm not quite at the point where I don't know if I have a deck or not. For the most part, I have the inventory in my head, but it is nice to know where everything is and have some sort of system that works for me. Anyways, hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and we will catch you at a later video.